Hey, the name of this show is Naturally Wild. My name is Steve Wildman Wilson. I'm your host here each week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, it's hot outside. You know, it's always a challenge to try to stay cool in Arkansas's outdoors this time of year. I really don't remember it being this hot when I was a kid. Maybe it was. Maybe we just didn't care, or at least it didn't affect me as much back then as it does today. You know, we were busy. We were always busy behind the house wading in the creeks and playing in the sprinklers and spraying each other with the water hose. But one of my favorite things I remember, every now and then we'd go to the Buffalo River and lay in some of those cool rapids. And probably one of the coolest things I remember from a long time ago is we'd go up to Blanchard Caverns. You ever been there? It's the 53rd Arkansas State Park, by the way. That was really cool in more than one way. Hey, another way to stay cool this time of year is to go fishing. No better place to do that than right here in Arkansas. But I got a question for you. Does it ever get too hot to go fishing? Well, here with me on this show is, to answer that question and a whole lot more, is the Deputy Director of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, Ben Batten. Hey, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Does it ever get too hot to go fishing in Arkansas?
No, it does not. You have to get a little creative, but it's always a good time to go.
It's been hot, though, and it's this way every year. I don't know why we always talk about it. Maybe it's something to do with age. It seems like it's hotter. But how you been staying cool lately?
I've been great. I have been spending time on the lake, sometimes more swimming than fishing, but just trying to get out there and be on the water and, you know, trying to get out there a little earlier.
The good thing about here in Arkansas, if you go fishing down the Buffalo or something like that and the fish aren't biting, just go swimming.
Exactly.
Tell us a bit about yourself. You've been with the Game and Fish Commission for quite some time. We got to work together. Kind of back up and tell the viewers where you're from.
Yeah, so I grew up in a little town outside of Springfield, Illinois, and went to college up there. And then I came to Arkansas back in 2004 to get my master's degree in fisheries. So I went to Pine Bluff and then got on with Game and Fish. I've been 17 years now at the Game and Fish, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I remember you. I remember when you started.
Yep.
Yeah. Where did you start, and kind of tell us where you've been to get up to Deputy Director? That's pretty high up there, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. So I started out in our family and community fishing program, which was a great place to start. I spent 6 years working on that program, stocking ponds around the state for families and kids to enjoy. And then I went into the fisheries, stayed in the fisheries division, but moved up into leadership. I was assistant chief for 3 years. Then I was the chief of the fisheries division for 4 years, and now I've just finished my 4th year in the director's office as deputy director.
So do you miss being outside? I know in some of those positions you got.
Yes, I do.
But the office is air conditioned. You got to look at it that way.
There is that, but I definitely miss being outside as much as I used to be.
Well, you know, one of the things I wanted to do this show is because we're going to talk about trout fishing in a few minutes, because that's a great way to stay cool here in Arkansas, is go trout fishing. But there's still a lot of people out there fishing every day, bass fishing. I see on Facebook fishing tournaments all the time. I wanted to kind of spend a few minutes talking about a new program that Game and Fish introduced, I guess it was in January, really, the first time ever. It was called the Legacy Lunker. Explain what that is for the viewers.
Yeah, we're so excited about this new program. Like you said, just kicked off this year. And what it is it is a trophy bass celebration and production kind of project. And so if an angler catches a bass over 10 pounds between January and the end of March, we will come meet that person at the lake, and if it looks good, we'll take that fish back to our hatchery and spawn it. It's pretty exciting.
Okay, now this is public waters only. In other words, if you got a pond that's got a bid 10 or 12, no, you can't do that, but it's public waters only. And
that's
it's
right.
January, mainly because that's the spawning season. They're catching the females off the beds before they lay their eggs.
The spawning season is March, April, May. Okay. And so we want to take those fish January, February, March, so we can get them in the hatchery, get them acclimated, so hopefully they'll spawn when that time comes.
Before they have their eggs in the lake.
That's right.
Because you take them, if you catch one over 10 pounds, you give them a call. They will come and pick it up any time of night.
Yes, they had a lot of runs and they didn't get back to the hatchery till midnight or 1 a.m. And
woo, look at some of those big old fish. And then they take it to the hatchery and put it in there, and they have a guy waiting on it there?
Yeah. So they're going to
male bass to match it up with?
They do. And we're working with some folks that are experts in genetics to help us pair up these males and females. And so the point is to produce, we know those big females have great potential to grow large. And so we had a great season this year. We had 19 fish were caught. 18 of them we were able to take back to the hatchery. And we were able to produce 300,000 fingerling fish. So that's about a 3 to 5 inch fish. They'd be spawned again in April and May. And by about the end of June, 1st of July, they're going out back to the lakes.
Okay, let me get this right. So you bring the females in, they pair up with a good DNA.
Yep.
Boy fish, if you will. Then you let them spawn there in the hatchery.
Correct, indoors.
And then you go stock them back in the lake that they came from with their mama.
Yeah, that's right. So, and another neat thing is those anglers that caught and turned in those fish, they get the opportunity to go back out with the biologist and put that fish back, maybe even on the bush they caught it on or whatever. So that's neat. Wow.
Now, how long will it take these, because you got good bloodline in there now, 320,000 fish. How long will it take them to, will they grow faster than a normal bass under normal
these
conditions?
are likely to grow fairly quickly, and I can just say, we can see results in as soon as, say, 3 years, but for sure in 4, 5, and 6. So, for example, Lake Monticello that we recently renovated, it's just 3.5 years past its renovation, and it already produced a 10-pound bass. So that's incredible growth rates. That's best case scenario.
When people think about bass fishing here, obviously they think about Ouachita, Millwood, ones that get all the highlights, because they do produce a lot of big bass. But we got surprised, didn't we? Where did the first 3 bass, or first 2 came out of a little place?
They came out of Lake Austell, which is up in a state park outside of Wynn, and 3 fish out of a 60-something acre lake. So that was incredible. Now, it's produced some big fish in the past, and we knew it was a possibility. Did not expect the first 3 to come out of that lake.
But think about it. Those fish are back in there, along with a lot of their offspring. So who knows?
That's right. That should help the future.
How many different lakes? I know, like we said, Ouachita, Millwood.
Monticello, DeGray, Austell, Atkins. We had 8 different lakes that produced, and so that was really exciting.
And that's a great testimony to where we have statewide fisheries. I mean, you've been managing for largemouth bass for a long time, and there's a lot more of them out there. If that many were turned in, they donated that. Just think of how many more were caught that they didn't want you to know where they were.
There's definitely some of that went on.
Hey, let's switch that a little bit. It took special renovation of that Joe Hogan Fish Hatchery, Lone Oak Fish Hatchery. Been there. Is that the oldest hatchery in the United States? Hatchery?
I don't know that it's not the oldest in the United States. It's definitely the oldest in Arkansas. It's one of the largest warm water fish culture facilities in the nation, owned by a state. And we did a huge renovation over the past couple of years. It finished up last summer. And what it did was, you can't just bring a bunch of fish out of the wild and throw them in a tank together. They'll give each other diseases, cause problems, stress each other. So this hatchery renovation allowed us to build some big tanks. So what we were doing is, we have up to 20 tanks we can use, and we put fish from the same lake together. Okay. So those 3 Austell fish were in one together and things like that. But we didn't have the space and the capacity to bring these fish in and quarantine them until we finish this work.
Our fish hatchery system here in Arkansas, I've always heard it's one of the largest in the United States. We got 4 warm water fish hatcheries?
That's right, 4 warm water hatchery and a trout facility.
Roughly how many fish does Arkansas Game and Fish stock across the state every year?
So we'll stock about 9 million fish on average in public waters. What we'll produce...
You said 9 million?
9 million, yes, sir.
Now, when I see 9 million fish, I'm thinking... But you're talking about...
A lot of these fish are going to be small, either young, fingerlings.
Yes, sir. But still, that's 9 million potential big ones.
That's right, and we stock a lot of forage fish too, like bluegill, golden shiners, and threadfin shad and things like that to supplement food populations.
Yeah, I started to say forage fish means that's the fish that the big fish eat.
That's
There's a food chain there, but you can't get big without being older too. The renovation of the Lone Oak Hatchery is huge, and it's going to pay dividends. This was our first year at Legacy Lunker. Huge success, would you say? Texas has been doing this for a number of years?
Yes, Texas has been doing it for 40 years this year. However, we are only the 2nd state in the country to do a program like this, so we're really proud of that. And like I said, First year went off great. There was a lot of nervousness about, you don't want to lose a fish, and we didn't. And so very proud of all the work that went in from our folks and the biologists and the hatcheries and everything that pull it off.
Well, good. Congratulations on the legacy lunker. It's hot out there bass fishing. Like I said before, if you want to get cool and fish at the same time, I'd go trout fishing. Talk about that a little bit. You've got one cold water fish hatchery. You got 5 total, 4 warm water, 1 cold. It's located in around Hardy. Talk about that.
Up in Mammoth Springs, pretty much on the state line. There's the Mammoth Spring, which is an incredible feat of nature where there's like 1 million gallons a minute just pumping out of a hole in the ground up there. And we're able to use that. So trout, you have to have cold water. They really want to be about 55 degrees. And that spring is pumping water out at that temperature year round. So we have that facility. We also partner with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They have 3 fish hatcheries, and we work as a team to stock all the fish that go out in Arkansas waters.
We had a few problems this last year recently, and Mother Nature does that to us. Talk about the damage up there and how we're coming along.
Yeah, the 2025 was a really rough year for Arkansas trout production. So first in April, we had a near record level. I think it was the second record flood up at the Spring River, and we lost about 75% of our fish on that hatchery.
Wow, just wiped out that hatchery.
Yeah, they either died, or if they were able to get out and swim, they got stocked unintentionally.
Yeah.
So you can imagine fishing, once that flood went down, fishing was pretty good up there for months. But that was really unfortunate. That threw a wrench in our plans. And then later on that fall, the main federal fish hatchery of Norfolk, they had almost a 90% loss with some really bad water quality issues that fall. So we've had problems at either, but we've never had both, that 1-2 punch.
Yeah, it was a double whammy, wasn't it?
It was.
Hey, I think I read the other day where Oklahoma had the same problem. Did they had a flood come through and
Well,
wipe
they get
there?
some of their fish from our facility,
Oh, do they really?
not from Game and Fish, but from the federal fish hatchery.
The eggs,
so they're working with the same fish we are, so they're affected by the same problem.
I was shocked to find out how long it takes. I know we buy the eggs from federal fish hatcheries, but you take them there at that hatchery up there in Hardy. How long does it take to get it from that little egg to a stockable size catfish? I mean, catfish, trout. We do the catfish too, but.
So it used to take more like 21, 22 months. We did some renovations up there and changed our design. We now have it down to about an 18-month time period to grow that fish, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think talking about catfish, it takes about a year and a half to get them up there.
It's about a 17-month process as well.
Man, and I want to bring that out because, hey, when you go to these fishing derbies, these guys stock the city park ponds with catfish in the summer and trout in the winter. Every time you catch one, it's 13 inches long, 15. It's a year and a half that these guys put in to raise it and stocking it. That's a lot of investment.
It does. It takes a lot. People think they just show up, but every catfish we produce in the state starts on the Joe Hogan hatchery. We grow some of them out elsewhere, but you're right. I mean, it's a significant investment to get that catchable size fish, but we love doing it. People love it, and it's great.
Yeah, and do you know how many trout you usually stock around this state every year?
Yeah, so again, with the feds together, we stock about 1.5 million trout. Now this year, because of what we've gone through, we're only going to stock about 860,000. I will say on the positive, the Spring River is back to 100% right now.
That hatchery's up and going running. Okay,
and
good.
Norfolk has all the fish back, but they need some more time to get some of theirs up. So we predict early 2027 they should be back to
That's
full.
good news.
Yeah, it is.
Good
it
news.
is.
Hey, when people think about trout fishing, I think everybody's seen that movie, River Runs Through It. But there's a lot of different ways. Of course, that's fly fishing, and that's beautiful, and I'm not a real good fly fisherman, but it's a great way to fly. But it's not the only way to fish for trout. A lot of people don't realize that.
No, we can meet any angler of any skill level. There's a place for you to trout fish.
Yeah, and different methods. I know wading is one of my specialties, especially this time of year. I mean, nothing feels better than that 55-degree weather. I wear waders still because it gets a little chilly, but you can stand out there knee deep and fly fish or fish with a spinning rod as far as
absolutely. So, talking about different methods, again, you could be in a boat, you could be on a kayak, you can be wading, you could be sitting in a lawn chair.
I started to say, I see a lot of people this time of year pull a lawn chair out there about knee deep, sit back there. I guess they're fishing. I don't know. They're probably just cooling off, but you have just good luck there. I see a lot of people, too, you can fish as you go down the river, floating in a,
drift
in a boat.
fishing.
Drift fishing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You can anchor up, sit
Yeah.
in one place. You know, like I said, there's many ways to do it. You know, and so you just need to figure out what works best for you.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but there's plenty of ways to do it. The types of trout you catch in Arkansas, roughly, we have 4 basic types of trout, would you say?
Yes, yes.
Are they breeds of trout or
They're
species of trout?
Correct. So
let me open your book there, folks.
Sure.
You need to pick one of these books up, by the way. It's the new guide just out this
one
July.
just came out.
And a little change. This book is now including the trout regs, right?
we did that last year
Okay,
for the
last year,
first time,
okay,
but it's the
first time.
second year. We've got all the regs together. We used to produce a standalone
Separate
trout
book,
book.
yeah.
And of course, all these, you know, you can get your pick these up at outfitters and Walmarts and,
Sure.
and bait shops, but everything's available online and through our app as well. So
Look on page 16, and let's talk about the basically 4 types of trout, species of trout.
Sure.
Probably the most common is the rainbow.
it is. So 94% of the catchable trout we're going to stock in a year are rainbow trout.
94%.
Yep, and that's an 11 to 12 inch fish, like we talked about. Takes about 18 to 20 months to
What's the
produce.
attraction to the rainbow other than the beauty of it? The color's got that pink stripe down the side.
Nah, they're a very pretty fish. The reason we do is just because they're the most easily domesticated fish. So they take to living in hatcheries. They breed well, they eat well, they grow well, and that's why years ago when they started probably trying all of them, the rainbow just stuck because it was.
They pull good too.
They do.
They do.
They do.
It's really a fun type of fish. That's the rainbow. Let's move from there to the brown. The brown trout's probably got the more people fish for rainbows, but the brown's got some famous history here in Arkansas.
Definitely. The browns folks love, and we have some interesting things on Greer's Ferry or Little Red Tailwater. We had the world record brown trout was from there, 40-pound, 4-ounce fish.
In fact, Ben, I think before you even came to work, I think we've held the world record three different times. We might want to point out the fact that one reason we have trout hatcheries is because the rainbows don't reproduce. I'm sure it happens every now and then.
A little bit, but not well.
Yeah, not a lot. But the browns do reproduce.
On Little Red River
Little Red.
Tailwater, that's the only one that we have not stocked in decades because they are
Really?
totally self-sustaining. And that's a really neat deal that we're very proud of.
Now, the rainbows, they don't get as big as the browns. I mean, that brown was 40 pounds.
Yes,
And there's
yes.
more in there that size or bigger. They're just smarter. The rainbows don't get that large.
They're not going to get near that large. You can still get some really big fish, but the brown's definitely king on size.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the brown trout. Another one in there is the cutthroat trout. I've caught one of these in my life.
Yeah, they're a really neat one. They're called cutthroat. It's pretty straightforward reason. They have a red patch on their throat. Looks like their throat's been cut. Looks like there's blood on it.
Are they not as colorful as the rainbow?
Not quite, but we also stock a few different varieties that have different spotting patterns. They're beautiful fish. They're a really fun one to catch, but it's something to catch a cutthroat because they're not near the numbers out there.
And then the last one is probably one of the most beautiful of all, I think, is that brook trout.
For me, that's one of the prettiest fish, out there in the state. They're, bright red. They've got these beautiful brown, blue and red spots, and they've got white fin margins. So the tips of their fins are bright white. They're really beautiful.
They don't get as large as some of the others.
No,
as
I
well.
think they're probably the smallest of
Are they?
everything we got. Yep. State records in the 4 to 5 pound range.
And I know the big challenge is, I've heard a lot of people say, hey, go catch that grand slam. And that's what you mean. You catch one of each 4 species.
That's right.
A couple other species here, but not as popular. What you got new? A golden trout?
Yeah, so the golden trout is a rainbow trout that's just bred for a certain characteristic, and they're bright yellow. They look like a banana in the water. The other interesting one is the tiger trout, which is a cross between brown and brook trout, and they have a really pretty pattern. Again, they're taken off in some of our tailwaters.
Wow. And I know they're all fun to watch, but the best thing about it this time of year, it's cool up there fishing. Types of baits, what do you use mainly? I know when you trout fish, it's totally different from anything else. What would you say about if you're going to go trout fishing, you got to size down?
Yeah, let's talk about least complicated, maybe the most complicated. Bait fishing is probably the simplest, using artificial eggs or even real eggs preserved on a hook with a weight on the bottom. Kind of not different from like a catfishing rig, just a weight to keep it down and a bait. After that, I would say you have your kind of small jigs. And again, definitely size down. Probably the number one thing I always want to tell people is use smaller line than you think. If you go out there with 8 or 10 pound test, they will see it and you will not get as many bites as somebody fishing next to you that's got 2 or 4 pound test on. You really got to size down. Small
and if you're
hooks,
my age or older, get magnifying glasses because
I'm starting
some
to
of
get
these
there.
lines look like thread.
Yes.
I mean, the trout fish, they sight fishers. They look for colors and they can see extremely well versus a catfish. They just smell it and eat it. That's all they do.
that's a great point. Trout are by far, strong visual predators. They're in clear water, and they are using their eyes to decide what they're going to eat or not. And they're fairly can be smart, especially ones that have been in the river a long time.
You don't get big being stupid, do you?
That's right. That's
hey, before
right.
we run out of time, talk about where people can go. I know people know about the White River. I mean, it's world famous. People come from all over the world to trout fish in Arkansas. They really do. The Little Red. But we've got other places in Arkansas that you guys stock trout that's good to go.
Yeah, so you hit the 2 biggest. Then after that is North Fork and Beavertail waters. We also have in Southwest, below Lake Greeson, we have more of a seasonal trout fishery. And then we do even in the wintertime, as you're aware, on that family and community fishing program, they stock a little over 40 locations with trout around the state where you can go catch them in the city.
As long as the water stays cool enough there. And you got a couple places in Hot Springs below the dam?
Yeah, we do.
Tailwaters?
Below those 3 tailwaters there on the Ouachita River, there's some stockings as well.
Special rules and regulations always with trout. You got different limits, different places. You got barbless areas. Talk a little bit about the trout limits because it's changed recently.
First of all, anyone, whatever you're fishing for, wherever you're going, grab a book.
Yep.
I always say no before you go. Make sure you check and figure out what your regs are, because the last thing you want to do is end up out there and get in trouble or anything else. And so the big thing is, for years and years, the statewide trout daily limit was 5 fish. But with these challenges at the hatchery, we set some emergency regs back last fall, and we dropped that daily limit down to 2. And then we did a regulation cycle this spring where we cemented those in. So those are going to be 2 fish daily limit. On those big tail waters, there's a max limit of 14 inches. So we're not letting folks keep big fish. And again, this is to kind of recover from the lack of stocking. And so those will remain in place at least until 2028 when we do our next reg cycle. But we have a great trout management team. They're going to look at all these rivers with their sampling equipment. They'll sample anglers and decide where do we go from here.
And you also have different areas or stretches of rivers that are catch and release only. I mean, you're trying to be, I guess everybody wants something different. I always got a kick out of it when you ask people, hey, do you want more fish or do you want bigger fish? You know what they usually say? Both.
Yep.
You really can't have both in a sense, but you do have stretches on different rivers where it's catch and release only, barbless hooks, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So we have several different special reg areas like that. And again, you can get in the book and look, and it'll tell you from where to where. There's signs on the ground that tell you when you're in that zone and everything else. But yeah, there's some special catch and release areas where we try to protect high volumes of quality fish.
What do you need to go fishing here in Arkansas? License, permit, so forth?
Yeah, you just really need your fishing license and a trout stamp.
Yeah, and that's for different ages, because if you're under 16, you still fish free here in Arkansas.
That's right. And last month we had free fishing weekend. That's a chance to go try it without that stuff. But normally, again, 16 and over, you need just a fishing license and a trout stamp. And that trout stamp goes directly, again, we talked about how expensive it is to produce these trout. And so that goes to that and management and things like that.
Any idea on the economic impact of trout fishing here in Arkansas?
Yeah, so we used some 2023 survey data and we published a report in 2024. And so just direct expenditure. So this is people paying for, gas, food, licenses, if they got a guide, if they lodged, and if they ate. Okay, just those things. $237 million in a year. Now that doesn't touch, there's a much broader economic impact for, what those guides make and what the resorts take and then there's a whole economy around real estate and people, there's lots of beautiful houses along these rivers and things. So, a lot of these communities are heavily driven by trout fishing.
Yeah. One thing before we leave here though, if you don't know about trout fishing, you're just getting into it or want to try it out, we recommend, because that water can get pretty dangerous up there with the levels and so forth, hire a guide. I mean, there's a new service out. It's called guide ARC, guide ARC, where it's a list of guide services up there that are reputable guides?
Yeah, our partners at Outdoor Rec have put out a deal where they're vetting guides, and they can get on, and so anybody can go and check out, and they know if they have a guide from there, they'll be good. But I talk to folks, I mean, get a guide if you can afford and that makes sense for you. Sure. Get one anywhere, because you will learn so much in a 4 or 5 hour trip that then you can go and choose to do on your own or whatever. But it's definitely well worth it if you can.
I always tell people, hey, if you can't afford it, wait a year, save up your money, go. You'll have a great time. They do everything for you. I mean, you don't have to have any equipment. They've got all that. They got the waders and so forth. They got the baits. They know where the fish are. Just pay attention to what they do and what they tell you. You don't need them anymore. Then if you think you'd like it, you can go invest your $5 million into this fly fishing stuff. But it's a great, I mean, we have fly fishers organizations here. What is it, Arkansas Fly Fishing?
Yeah, we have a really rich community around trout fishing, around guiding here in Arkansas. We're fortunate, and it's just such a neat resource that all that's grown up around it, and it makes it it's really rich.
Well, good. The future looks good for us.
It does. It does. We had a little hurdle this last year, but I feel like we're back on the right path.
Ben, thank you so much for coming in. And great information. Hope you've enjoyed this, all about trout fishing here in Arkansas. Stay cool. We'll see you next week right here on Naturally Wild. This program was made possible by Arkansas Hunters Feeding the Hungry, East Harding Construction Company, David's Burgers, Greenway Equipment, Arkansas Farm Bureau, and the Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas.